We try to help our customers understand what they can do to better their property, what they can do, and how they should be able to talk to their mowers and their landscapers and even their arborists. So we try to be almost kind of like what I was as a battalion career counselor, kind of this conduit of here's what you need to know, here's who you need to talk to. We kind of do that with American Lawnscape as well. Yeah, we have our place in it, but we also understand that there's a responsibility that comes with the experience that we bring to the table. And that responsibility isn't leaving you, Fred, high and dry or anybody else high and dry. We have some knowledge, and we're willing to part with that as much as you're willing to take it in.
Welcome to the McKinney Podcast, the show that celebrates what makes McKinney unique by nature. This podcast exists to spotlight the people, the organizations, and the events that shape our great city. You can count on every episode to tell a compelling story and help increase your awareness and perspective on what's happening around McKinney. Your hosts for this fun-filled adventure are Fred Mahusay, owner of FredShots Photography, and James Jenkins, CEO of RiskWell. Connect with us on YouTube and on our website, McKinneyPodcast.com. Now, let's get into it. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the McKinney Podcast. We celebrate what makes us unique by nature. And our guest for this episode is Douglas Ringer. He is a Armed Forces veteran, and he is the owner and operator of American Lawnscapes. Welcome, Douglas. How's it going?
It is going fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. I have to defer to Fred and Elizabeth on this one. I've never seen a single thing from you, but they speak very highly of you, and apparently you are about to unleash an amazing story of life well lived and business here in McKinney and the lawn and landscape world. And man, I'm just looking forward to jumping into it.
Okay, that sounds great.
All right, so I don't know if it's going to make it into the teaser, but you said Nebraska.
Right.
That's where life started for you.
It did. So born and raised in Omaha, Nebraska.
And so aside from corn and Mutual of Omaha, what else is in Nebraska?
Oh, well, you have to go with the Nebraska Cornhuskers. That's
the bug eaters?
the bug eaters from way back. And I'm also a University of Nebraska alum. And so my daughter's a Nebraska alum. So if you're not a fan of the Nebraska Cornhuskers, you probably came from Iowa or Oklahoma or somewhere else. In fact, I think when you're born in Nebraska, they issue you a Nebraska flag and a Nebraska card. But no, it's Husker Nation all the way. But we also have some other things. We have the one of the largest zoos in the United States, which is the Henry Dorley Zoo. We have community theater and community playhouses. We have a huge per capita restaurant and bar scene. So it's more than just corn and snow.
I will say I have had the privilege of visiting the great state of Nebraska. I was up there for a speaking gig in Omaha. I got to go to a baseball game at the College World Series Stadium and found out firsthand that Nebraska nice is a thing. And it is a phrase, it is a way of life. And man, oh man, like Nebraska people are a lot nicer than the average American. And that's coming from someone who's lived his whole life in the South. So yeah, Nebraska nice, man. I got to give it to you guys. You guys do it a different way of friendly up there.
Well, Texas is the friendship state, but Omaha emulates that. And the state motto is the good life. And it really is the good life there. The bigger cities are fast, like most big cities, but we don't have a lot of big cities. We have Omaha. And we have the state capital, which is Lincoln, which is about the size of McKinney. And so if you've spent any time in Lincoln, Nebraska, a college town, and then come to a place like McKinney, you realize that, one, McKinney's doing a little bit more with its space than Lincoln does, but it's that same friendship feel. It's the same community feel that you get. And so it's you feel like home when you come from Nebraska down to this part of Texas.
All right. So, Douglas, you're running around the cornfields in Nebraska. What was that? What was that like for you? What was like, let's say, in high school, what were your interests?
So I grew up in a part of Omaha that was pretty far north, and so we're pretty close access to the, outside of town, almost to the country. So I wasn't really in the farm fields, but Omaha was like any other big city, but we spent a lot of time in surrounding areas. So growing up, we did a lot of time camping, a lot of time fishing. My dad was a construction worker and was a paving superintendent. He'd work all week long. And towards the end of the weekend, my mom would have the camper ready and the boat ready, and we were out. And so a number of lakes, we'd spend all weekend out on the lakes, out in the country. And so for me, Nebraska was access to wide open spaces, places to play, being out on the water, just being one with the nature and surroundings. And those were my formative years growing up, and that's what I remember. In high school, football and track, but I was also into journalism. I was also into theater. Tried to do a little bit of everything. And even in high school is when I joined the military. I joined a split option program for the Army Reserves and went to basic training my junior year. So I had a lot of different experiences in a short amount of time.
Wow. It's like, so
that is a lot.
You're an athlete and a thespian.
I was, and that's why football and track worked out so well, because a lot of your plays and spring musicals happened before track season really kind of kicked off, but after football season. So that was kind of the bridge between the two. And so junior year, had never been in acting before at all, and tried out for the school musical, which at that time was Bye Bye Birdie, and ended up getting the lead. And didn't know that I probably shouldn't be somebody that would jump into a lead position in a musical, but it was fantastic. And it actually led to me picking theatrical arts as my first major in college, long before biology.
I'm sitting here shocked. I'm looking at this guy wearing Army green. He's got workman hands. He's got salt to the earth hands, and it says that he was
physically fit.
It's just like a jet. I'm seeing all these veins on his arm, and he's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of a decade older than me and in much better shape than I am. And I'm like, wait, theater? Make that make sense, Douglas.
Well, it's, I guess, the duality of man, right? So my junior year, I'm going to basic training. And my senior year, I'm coming back and just waiting for the next musical to come around, which at that time was South Pacific, which I played Billis in. And so I wanted all the worlds. I wanted to be up on stage. I was in marching band as well. I was a drummer. And so I was in journalism. I was trying to do all these different things, just trying to get life's experiences.
You're like the Renaissance man. Holy smokes. It's like, I feel like I wasted my high school years.
What have I done with my life, Fred?
That's just my high school years.
Douglas has more experience in his first 18 than I have in my 42.
Yeah, no.
Well, and what's funny now is that, you get older and you become much more reserved. And so I'm not the dancer, singer, stage guy. I really don't care for much attention on myself now. And, it's probably safe to say that I don't know that I cared for it then. I just wanted to be able to learn new things, express new things. Got to the University of Nebraska as a theater major and loved the courses, loved the classes, and really thought that there's a chance for me to go out to California and make it and get into acting and get into theater. But looking back on it, this was probably a young kid that really hadn't thought it all out.
Well, isn't that what all of us were?
Right.
Especially as young guys.
Right.
Go take on the world, and I can do anything and everything.
As I got a little bit older, the military side of it became more important to me. Mm-hmm. And I was a military policeman. That was my first military occupational skill. And so between my senior year and my freshman year in college, I went to MP school in Anniston, Alabama at Fort McClellan. And as the military started kind of taking over in my mindset, the theater side of it kind of fell away. My desire to kind of be any type of center of attention, or actually even, I would say, artistic at all, kind of took a backseat towards shoot, move, and communicate, and those kind of things that make sense as a military soldier. And it wasn't too long after that I was deployed to Desert Storm.
So as an MP, I've met other MPs, and for some odd reason, a lot of them seem to share the same story, that a significant portion of their responsibilities were handling some of the younger enlisteds who there was their first taste of freedom and too much alcohol, and having to basically get them back in line or get them back in order, get them back on base. Did you have a lot of that?
We went through that type of training, but fortunately for me, that isn't the kind of MP I was. So I was a combat MP, and I was part of yeah, exactly.
Ooh.
So
Different MP.
what our mission was POW or EPW operations.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we were deployed to Desert Storm, we went out in the middle of the desert and set up a POW camp. And so I don't know, you guys are you're about the age of probably remembering CNN back in the days and seeing all the Iraqi troops flooding towards the rear, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, where they
walking across the desert with their hands up, waving flags.
I'm not going to fight.
So there were a lot of those guys. There were some guys, almost like the Japanese out on the Pacific Islands, that in World War II that didn't know the war was over. We had to actually go round those guys up in big open semi-trailers, and bring them back to our POW camp. There were 3 POW camps for the Army in Desert Storm, and we ran one of them. And we were out in the middle of nowhere. It was concertina wire and tents, and we had up to 24,000 POWs at one time.
24,000.
Wow,
That's a city.
It was a city, and so they call it a camp instead of a battalion or a company, because it is a camp structure. You have everything in there. We have repair and utilities. We have mechanics. We have medical. We have the military police were part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, you just go up and set up a town out in the middle of nowhere and operate this POW operations facility.
At the risk of asking a really dumb question, how do you get utilities out there? Because you didn't have solar panel technology back then. You're not going to run like electrical stuff. Is it everything just running off of gas generators?
Everything's running off of generators.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm
just trying to imagine like extracting running water from the desert or carrying extremely large containers of potable water.
So the POW camp itself didn't have a lot of generated electricity. We would have we had a guard company from Las Vegas that actually did all of our perimeters, and they had spotlights would be set up for nighttime, and those were run off generators. But everything else was without power, and so water was brought in by trucks. Food was brought in by trucks and was cooked there on the sites, usually with propane or some type of cooking source. But we didn't have lights. We didn't have electricity of any kind. We did have like sewage containment, but that was built by the engineers, so nothing that really needed any type of power. It was pretty primitive.
So going to the bathroom in a hole in the ground.
Without getting into the details, it was something like that.
Yeah.
It was something, these guys would have areas where they went, and these things would have to be dumped into these long sewage tubes that would go into a cistern. The cistern would have to be treated, but it was pretty primitive.
Wow.
So it wasn't I'm going to enjoy my 15-minute shower every night sort of thing.
No, it wasn't. In fact, even for the soldiers that were there, we didn't even have heated water until probably about 4 months into it. And so they would have these big water containers that you could go and just pull a chain and take a shower with.
Like watching old reruns of MASH.
It was almost exactly like that. In fact, it was like that when you think about that. Except in the desert, we're there in February, March, April, May, and so it can get up to 120 degrees, but it can get down to 50 degrees at night. So we would be out in the heat all day long, and then all of a sudden the sun goes down. You're going back to taking a cold shower. I absolutely hated it. We had a lot of guys that would we were a number one purchaser of baby wipes when they came out because that was the best way to be able to shower at that time. I feel now that I watch these movies and documentaries of World War II guys chipping ice out of their canteen cups to be able to shave. I can't even imagine that. I didn't even want to shower in cold water out in the desert.
Mm-hmm. Oh man! So how long were you out there at these camps?
So we got into country in January of '91, and we redeployed back to the States in June. And so we were out there for about 6 months.
Man, and so. You said that at night you had generators that operated, the big floodlights. Did you feel like you were like a well-illuminated sitting target? I mean, because there's nothing around you except all of a sudden there's this big bright light. Did you ever feel like, man, I can't, go out there, or, it's not safe because anybody who's, just outside of the light can be picking you off. You're a target.
I didn't feel like that when we were out in the middle of the desert. And so we were just out by this little town called Al-Sarar. And so by the time we got out in the desert, it felt pretty safe. We had a pretty big footprint out there. But when we first got into country is when we started getting all the Scud attacks into Dhahran. And so that's when we felt the least safe, because you're just sitting ducks and there was just nothing we could do about it. We're sitting in buildings and I remember the first night that a Scud came in, and we're looking out the windows. We were in the farthest ones towards the north of the Dhahran compound. And one of my friends and I are looking out the window. It's after dark. And we see this light. And we're like, what is that? And this is the very first Scud that had come in. And we're watching it, and it's getting brighter and brighter. And I remember looking at my friend going, Scud? And about that time, the sirens go off, and we didn't know at that time whether or not they had chemical weapons attached to these, whether they could launch it that far. And so even though you're inside of a building, the first thing you do is go to your chemical mission-oriented protective posture 4. So you're throwing on your charcoal suits and your boots and your mask. You're trying to get them on as fast as you can and hope that if this thing does go off around you, it's not going to disperse nerve agent or something like that. So those were scary times, because it got to a point to where it was predictable when those would happen. But, even years later, just hearing like the civil defense siren testing would kind of shake me down a little bit, because it's unnerving. Just that unsettling thing, just sitting there, seeing it coming in and just waiting.
And Scuds were notorious for not having an excellent or dependable targeting system, right? Weren't those the ones that would veer off?
They were going all over the place. And one of the problems that the Iraqis faced with the Scuds is that we were just outside of their range.
Yes.
And so they were just lobbing them a little bit farther than their effective range.
And was it the Patriot missile that we had as the
Scud killer?
We did.
Yeah. Yep.
And we had a Patriot battery sitting right next to our building. And so you'd watch them go off, and, my dad talked about being home and being around family watching this on TV and everybody applauding. We were doing the same thing. We're like, oh, yeah, good hit. Good job, Patriot battery. Okay, next round.
Well, it's kind of like watching the Iron Dome in Israel do its thing with the rockets and all that stuff. It's just like, okay, offense, meet defense, give it your best shot because our defense is ready.
Right.
So love that. Well, what's the bridge? How do you go from military service to civilian life? When did you find yourself leaving military service, and how was that transition for you? Because back in that era, my dad didn't serve in combat. He was in the National Guard at that time, and had the war gone on for about another 3 months, he would have deployed. He was on the list to deploy, but thankfully the conflict ended before he had to. I remember that really well. I was about 7 years old at the time, and we were all terrified that Dad was going to get sent across the world. That era, they didn't really have as keen an understanding of PTSD, of mental health, of all of the things that they do now, in modern day military. What was it like for you transitioning out of military life, and how did you find civilian life?
So the PTSD thing, I spend a lot of time talking to veterans now and moving, and we can get into later, my later military career, because I had a second phase where I was active duty for the state of Nebraska, but PTSD really wasn't talked about. You took your DD-214, your separation papers down to the VA, and you checked in, and then you just kind of went about your life. And most of us that I served with in the POW camp, all of my friends were college students. And so I came back, and instead of going back to Lincoln, I went to the University of Nebraska, Omaha, and this is when I really kind of decided that, this whole acting thing was never going to work out. And I want to get out of school. So what interests me? How many credits do I have? I went and talked to my counselor, and she's like, for somebody that wasn't a biology major, you sure have a lot of science credits. And I had a lot coming out of high school. And I was like, biology is the thing. I really am geared towards biology. I think like this, let's explore that. And so I went ahead and got my Bachelor of Science in Biology and graduated. And I'm thinking, now I can go out in the world I've got a 4-year degree. I can do anything. And I didn't realize that with just a 4-year degree in biology, you really can't do much.
Get a job at Walmart.
You can.
I can attest to that. I also have a 4-year biology degree.
Right.
You can't do much.
You can't do much, and so you can go down to the medical center and draw blood as a phlebotomist. You're qualified for that.
Yep.
Or like for me, it was like, all right, well, I'll get into turf, because there's University of Nebraska has a huge ag program, which I wasn't a part of, but part of the extension office talked about getting into the turf industry. So I went to work for a golf course for the first time, and that led very quickly over the course of just a few years to going from just a laborer on a golf course to becoming a mechanic at a different golf course, becoming an assistant superintendent at the golf course, and then taking over and becoming a superintendent of an 18-hole golf course. And I absolutely loved the outdoor work, but I absolutely loved, at the University of Nebraska, I was also on crew. So since I too small to play football, not fast enough to run track, I joined crew.
Just rowing.
So I'm just rowing. And so the sports mindset and the physiology mindset and the physical mindset and nutrition were all still back there. And I actually bridged from being a golf course superintendent using the biology in writing a couple books on dietary supplements called The Physician's Guide to Nutraceuticals. So I got to a point in being a golf course superintendent that at the time I wasn't confident in the fact that the technology was there and the chemicals that I was putting down, that it was all environmentally friendly. And we were spending $300,000 a year on chemicals alone at this golf course. And so I decided I wanted to take a break from that and moved into publishing. So I'm still carrying the biology with me. At the same time, I'm transitioning away from being a military policeman. I'm taking a secondary MOS. At the time, it was called Nuclear Biological Chemical. Now it's called CBRNE, Chemical, Biological, Radiological, Nuclear, and Explosive. And this is just another field. And so all these fields I'm moving kind of around and through. And so ended up writing books about nutritional supplements, had a couple rounds of that. 9/11 happens, kind of put a kibosh on the printed book industry.
Yep.
And so in 2006, I went back in the military.
Was that the State National Guard of Nebraska?
That was National Guard of Nebraska. And oddly enough, I felt I had gotten out of the military in 97, 98 time period. And I did miss it. I missed the camaraderie. I missed, the outdoor training and all of that. But at the same time, when my publishing company went down, I still owed some debt because we had a lot of books that were returned right after 9/11. And so at the time, the National Guard was offering reenlistment bonuses of $20,000 for all the MOSs I held, which was the chemical MOS, the military police, and infantry. So I actually went back in to get the bonus to serve. I mean, that was the main reason, but that gave me enough money to be able to pay off the debt. And shortly after I got in as a National Guard guy, I was asked to become active duty. And my active duty job was being a career counselor, talking about the PTSD, helping returning soldiers, because we were heavily in deployment phase in 2006 to 2009. And so helping soldiers get the attention that they needed.
That was the second surge, right?
That was the second surge. And we had a lot of roadside bombs that were happening, a lot of people getting injured, a lot of people dying in a short amount of time. And so my job was kind of the conduit of resources to help soldiers returning back find the help that they needed, whether it was financial, whether it was for college, or especially whether it was to help with PTSD. And even then, I don't think the Army did a good enough job of really pushing that narrative. It was still looked down upon that as a weakness, that if you had a problem due to combat, that you actually went and saw somebody about it, especially while you were still serving.
So it was basically rub some dirt in it, walk it off, and you're fine.
Well, pretty much. And there was kind of this idea that if you had a problem that you were willing to enunciate and talk about, that maybe you weren't safe to be around for the next deployment, that maybe you weren't stable enough to go handle a 50 cal on a convoy or handle a weapon at all. And so there was still a little bit of that stigma. I think now that's changed. I think there's just been so much carnage that soldiers and Marines and other defense servicemen have seen. Mm-hmm. And the repercussions now, you go from the Vietnam guys that never had help. These guys really never got anything until later in life. And now you're seeing where it's kind of come full circle to where most services, as you're getting off, lead off with that as you're getting out.
That's excellent. So you go back and then you serve your time. And then somewhere in there, so we did all the things in high school. We go serve in the military. We get out of there, get a degree, write books, go back to the military. Do you sleep? Have you had any? Do you ever experience what sleep is? Because you've got all these things going on. How did you, when you left that military part of your life, did you just think, man, lawns, that speaks to me?
It all seems kind of random, but as I kind of look back at it, I can see the central theme of being around biology and nature this entire time. And so at the time, my wife, Barbara, she's from Texas, was living in Allen, and we'd spent a lot of time doing the long distance thing.
How did you guys meet?
Actually, that has to do with rowing. We actually met in 1989, University of Nebraska. We were on spring break, and we decided to spend a few days at the University of Texas at Austin to do some training for the rowing team, and then we were going to do some races as we were coming back through on our way to Nebraska. And we had a little bit of time off training. At that time, University of Texas had already had their spring break, and they were sitting in class. And so I was standing out in front of Capitol Records down off the Austin campus, and Barbara walks by and flashes me a smile and then crosses the street. And I swear I'd never done anything like this before or since. I chased her down across campus, and I'm thinking I finally catch up to her. And I'm like, I got to say something cool. What am I going to say? And I'm like, hi, I'm Doug. What's your name? And we ended up kind of hanging out that week, and that's how we met. And during that time period, there's no email, there's no texting, so everything's long distance.
That's right. Yeah. How do you manage that?
And snail mail, love stories.
Snail mail, right?
So long distance phone call bills.
So we spent a couple months having multi-$100 phone bills, yes. And she's like, I can't do this long distance thing. And I'm like, okay. So the next year, I decided to come back down and visit her, and I stayed down in Austin for, I don't know, I think it was probably 2 or 3 days, and we had a disagreement. We were both 20. We had a disagreement, and I just got in my car and left. And I thought there's always going to be time to catch back up, right? And sure. There wasn't. Then I got deployed, and I called her right before deployment, and that was the last time that we talked or even had any communication until 2009, 2010. It was, in fact, I found her on Facebook, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. That's her. We had both been, separated and divorced from prior marriages. We lived pretty much full life up to that point, and we got back together. So anyway, that's how I got back to Texas, and so I spent a lot of time flying back and forth from Omaha to into Dallas, and we'd spend weekends in McKinney. And even though she was living in Allen, McKinney was the center of the universe for us. And so we were down. I loved the square. I love hanging around it. And I know that there's going to be people that listen to this from, Frisco and Little Elm and Melissa. And I know that you don't want to admit this, but McKinney is the center of your universe. This is where it all happens. This is the heart of this area.
This guy.
Man's dropping truth bombs. Normally that's our line.
Right. But this is where it's at,
Well, Denton has a cute little square.
They do have a nice
square.
It's
not nearly as nice as ours, but it's better than most. Frisco has a street called Main Street.
That's right.
And then some retail a little bit next to it. Yeah. Y'all know y'all come to McKinney downtown on Saturdays.
Right. Well,
admit it.
Go anywhere else in the United States and say, hey, I'm kind of in the North Dallas area. Do you know any areas around there? Have you ever heard of McKinney? Oh, yeah. My aunt lives outside of McKinney, or my uncle lives, right down the road from McKinney. Yep. Nobody ever says Princeton. No, nobody ever says Greenville. And I love those areas, by the way. We do business there too. But McKinney is kind of where my heart is.
Yeah.
And
Greenville has a square.
Greenville, I love all these areas. I love all these areas for what they are. But really, McKinney is ground zero for me. You know, we'd get up in the morning, and on the weekends before I'd fly out, we'd go down to Spoon's for breakfast. We'd go to Rick's Chop's house. We stayed at the Grand Hotel. You know, these are just memories that I have of just being around this area. And it was home enough to me that it was comparable. If you were in Omaha, downtown Omaha in the old market is very similar to downtown McKinney. There's a lot of shops. There's a lot of restaurants. There's a lot of history.
Yep.
And
it felt very home when I was in Omaha.
It does. Yeah. And you know, there's
this is giving McKinney energy.
It is. It's a lot of McKinney energy. And if you've ever been to another square, like my parents have a square that's about the same size, or did. My parents are long gone, but they lived in Bolivar, Missouri. And so the courthouse set in a very similar square type situation, but there was just nothing around it, you know? And so you just have this building, and there's just, you know, maybe there's a dollar store, or maybe there's something else. McKinney is so unique because all of the cultures and everything that you could possibly want are crammed into this one area. So you've got art, you have food. It's a little bit eclectic. You know, you've got a pizza place, and then you've got a farm to table restaurant. I don't know that you could spend enough time down here going through all the shops to really get a take on everything before it changes just a little bit, and you've got to go back through it again. So that's what keeps us coming back to it.
Well, there's something about walking through a building that has been there for 120 years. And it's just 110, 105, 80, 90, 95 years. It's like, it just smells different. It's built different. The floor creaks differently. It's like, you cannot replace the magic of a really old building that's been well maintained.
Yeah.
When you go through some of these buildings celebrating the heritage of McKinney, and I'm a history buff anyway, and so you see these old pictures of McKinney. You know, here's a picture of McKinney in 1886, and you know there's wagons and horses and everything sitting out. You can walk out and find that spot.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that.
You know,
like First National Bank.
Yes. Right, exactly.
On the east side of the square. Yeah.
Right.
Where the bank with the eagle on top. It is like that building in its current facade has been there for 140 something years.
It's just amazing. And there it stands. And you know, there are things that have changed around it, but the core of the respect and the heritage of the city has remained throughout. And you can tell when you have we had some friends of ours that bought a house right off of the square, and you know, bringing it back to, you know, there's certain code that you have to bring your house up to be able to renovate. You can't just, you know, rip and replace. It has to stay true to the heritage, especially if it's considered a historic site. So going around and paying attention to some of these grand houses outside of the square is amazing to me. Just walking around, we have a lot of customers in these areas, and everything's just so unique and eclectic in a way.
Well, absolutely. Elizabeth and I, anytime we have to drive anywhere around the square, especially in those neighborhoods, and we see like a new house goes for sale, we're like, oh, babe, let's get that one. So, you know, of course, you know, it's a little bit outside of the budget, but what people have done to preserve those homes and really, you know, revitalize those neighborhoods.
Are you searching for a home in downtown?
Listen, we're always looking. We're always looking.
This for the guy who, for the longest time, I had no idea you were renting the house you're in. And you said for economic reasons, it made a lot of sense because you have a house in Florida. And it was like, oh, I never thought about it that way.
But no, we're always.
Are you actively looking?
Well, not actively looking, but we're actively dreaming. Actively dreaming.
Those are two different things, aren't
because
they?
there's some homes that it's just like, you know, we're at the stage now where our youngest is, you know, trying to make life moves. He's 23, but it's tough for a 23-year-old nowadays to move out because it's just expensive in the area.
It is.
And, you know, he's still, you know, we were having a discussion the other night. And as soon as that was done, Elizabeth and I are looking at each other like, what if we didn't need this home because we don't need all the rooms? And then, you know, you just start dreaming about what could it be? Where would it be? What would it look like? And all those other things. But enough about us. So
American Lawnscape?
That's right. Yeah. So one day, I don't know, you're writing a book, you're writing a song, you're doing a play. doing biology things, realizing this, and then you say, you know what, golf course is a great business. Let me just go commercial residential with this.
We actually started with this question, so I'm not sure if I got us off track or you did, but
no.
We'll get back to it.
It was probably Fred.
Probably. So, Fred, to get back on track here.
That's right.
So in 2012, I had a strong choice to make, and it was, do I go ahead and continue on with my military career, or do I get out? And I had gotten up high enough in the rank structure that it just wasn't fun anymore. The politics of being in this small state army, like the Nebraska National Guard, I wasn't being able to do the same things that I could before. Freely trained soldiers do all this. So I needed a business, and I spent a lot of time thinking about it. And I decided to start American Lawnscape, and I knew that it had to be, in McKinney, Texas, because of the growing season, because of the different types of grasses, the challenges. And so when I moved down here, this is what I started. In fact, first, what I started was a Christmas light business because I moved down in October of 2012. But the very next spring, American Lawnscape started, and it was just one dude out doing all of it, doing the mowing and the landscaping and anything else that we could do to get business. And I loved it. I'm back into kind of, we didn't talk about my first job. My first job at 14 was working for a large cemetery running a weed eater. And so it had really kind of come full circle. So I'm back out running a weed eater, maintaining people's lawns, learning new biology, learning new grass types.
Except there were no headstones
There were no headstones. At least not in the areas I was supposed to be in. I'm kidding. But it has evolved from there. So we were a do everything kind of company. Mm-hmm. And so we kind of really leaned on my experience as a golf course superintendent. And it was the planned intent to move into a lawn treatment only company. So fertilizer, weed control, and turf care and plant mm-hmm. management. And it took us a while to get there. It took us until even after COVID to finally get there. And so here we are. So this is what we do now. And I love what we do because not only do we go out and treat properties, but we partner with the people that we're working with. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you're on the email list or not, but we send out a lot of information that we put out every month. We put out a newsletter. We put out spring tips and tricks. We try to help our customers understand what they can do to better their property, what mm-hmm. they can do, and how they should be able to talk to their mowers and their landscapers and even their arborists. So we try to be almost kind of like what I was as a battalion career counselor, kind of this conduit of here's what you need to know, here's who you need to talk to. We kind of do that with American Lawnscape as well. Yeah, we have our place in it. But we also understand that there's a responsibility that comes with the experience that we bring to the table. Mm-hmm. And that responsibility isn't leaving you, Fred, high and dry mm-hmm. or anybody else high and dry. We have some knowledge, and we're willing to part with that as much as you're willing to take it in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I just personal testimony is that, I got to know about you because my wife Elizabeth met Barbara at something, and, they just had this connection. So they went and had lunch or coffee or something. And Elizabeth was like, listen, I think we should give them a shot at our yard. So I'm the lawn cutter. All right. So I handle that part. But I do have to say that over this last year, yard has looked the best that it's looked in a while, like, deeper green, and definitely because my former neighbors didn't do anything about their weeds. Those things started to invade my lawn. But, with your treatments, that got beat back, and it was very easy. And, I enjoy doing the yard, which is, most people I meet, they're like, they would rather hand that off to someone else. But that's like my Zen time. I like making the lines in the yard and all those other things. But I noticed that I didn't have to do nearly as much, if any, of plucking the weeds, because that was, that's probably the biggest thing, because I don't know what has been engineered into weeds, but they can grow. Can grow. Weeds
are very good at being weeds. Mm-hmm. And
that's a good statement right there.
They're very efficient at it. And everything's big in Texas, including the weeds and the amount of weeds. Yep. And we have 3 seasons of grass in Texas, but we have 4 seasons of weeds. it's just amazing, especially coming from a northern climate where, and I'll tell you this story, and this kind of lays into why we do an annual treatment. I was coming into McKinney one weekend. It was cold out, and we were coming up Stonebridge, and I was like, what are those guys doing out there? And there's landscapers out there, and Barbara's like, oh, they're planting winter flowers. And I'm like, winter flowers? And she goes, you don't have winter flowers in Nebraska? I was like, well, we do. They're plastic. No, nothing grows in the winter in Nebraska. It's cold. It's frozen. And so to understand how your lawn's going to perform in June, you really have to know what it's doing in January and December, because there's still a lot of stuff going on. And if you just ignore that, you're probably in for a lot of reactionary trouble down the road.
Yeah, I know that before we'd even started recording, I was lamenting that even though we had a week of ice covering everything, that as soon as it was gone, the ice was like steroids for the weeds, because they just all of a sudden just popped up through everything. The grass is still, in its dead brown phase, but the weeds it's like spring break for them. They just turned up.
Well, they did, and it's one of the things we do as a company, and this is why I love being a scientist, is because we have the privilege to be able to kind of watch those markers as they come up. We're paying attention to soil temperatures, we're paying attention to weather patterns, we're paying attention to the history of things, and so we have the ability to adapt our program to not only the climate that we're seeing right now, but what we're seeing as far as forecasts coming up, because you would think that we would do the same thing every month, every year. And for a lot of companies, that's true. And that's economically more feasible to do it that way. We'll shift gears and we'll change things up. So the things that we were doing on your lawn last year, you may see something marginally different this year if this year's different than last year.
Well, I just want to see my yard and not the weeds. But I don't understand it though, because weeds are they're so hardy, they're so robust. Why can't we turn that into an acceptable thing for our yards?
Well, what's kind of funny is some people do and they don't realize it. Grassy weeds. We have so many different grassy weeds, and if you understand that we really only have three grasses down here, which is Bermuda, St. Augustine, and zoysia. Well, there's some other ones, but anything you see outside of that is weed. And so there's many more weeds that look like grasses than actual grasses themselves. And so, could you have a yard full of weeds and have it be grass? Sure, you probably could. It would be kind of a weird competition to have, because you'd have different sections looking different at all different times. But, with that being said, there's certain areas in your yard that maybe grass isn't going to grow at all. Like in your backyard, you've got an area in the back there that there's just no way it's going to grow some grass.
Tree, it's not going to happen.
No.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say we quote a line from Men in Black 3 sometimes: where there is death, there will always be death. And sometimes that's true for areas like that. And there's just, Texas is not the greatest place to grow lawn grass. It just isn't. It's hot. Dallas isn't really good for some of your types of grass because we're semi-arid. We're not like Houston where it's humid all the time. And, our grasses, some of them like full sun, and sometimes we don't get that if we have that compromise of, if you like trees, maybe you're not going to have as good a grass. And if you really want grass, then you can't have as many trees. And it's kind of this, you try to find that balance. And
so in your industry, much like mine, much like Fred's too, for that matter, there's an overabundance of generic players that all look and sound very, very similar. You've got 1,000,001 lawn care and landscape companies, just like you've got 1,000,001 insurance agencies and 1,000,001 different photographers.
10,000,001 photographers.
Yeah, because every mom with a camera suddenly has a photography business with some sort of lens in the logo.
That's right.
And yeah, I mean, for those of you that are actual full-time professionals, or in your case, scientifically minded professionals, it can be difficult to get your point across to your customer base because they're inundated with folks that all look and sound the same. How do you combat that? What is your secret sauce? What is the unique value that you deliver, the unique service or expertise that you bring to the customer that makes them want to pick American Lawnscape over the 50 different other options in McKinney?
We kind of call out the other ways of doing it as not being as effective, and cookie cutter ways of doing things just don't work. So if you walk down the street in McKinney, you're going to see different grass types. You're going to see different shade profiles. You're going to see different soils. You're going to see different everything. And you can't just decide a plan in September of the year before and buy your products ahead and come out and expect an effective rate. So we let people know that we're going to get to know your yard, and your yard is different than your neighbor's yard, and their yard is different than a few doors down, and your whole neighborhood is different than the neighborhood down the street. And so there are many different variations of how we do things. And so I don't know from month to month. I can pretty much move your yard in a certain direction, but I really don't know until I show up. And so what we do is we mix most of our stuff on site. There's a lot of things that we do that are somewhat cookie cutter. Our fertilizers have to go down a certain time of year. Pre-emergence, pretty just Loctite, and I'll move that one way or another. But when we show up on site, myself or our techs, we have to make a decision that day on what does your yard need. And that plays into how effective everything is going to be going forward. So that's our difference. We get to know you. We get to know your yard. We get to know your biosphere because it's different and unique. Unique by nature, unique of nature is what your yard is. And so we pay attention to that. And you have to put in the hard work to do that. And you've got to spend some time getting to know the biology of your customers.
Yeah, I love that. I can't be a big enough fan. Or I cannot be unbiased in this interview because I've been the direct recipient of it. That's right.
Yeah,
and trying to manage it myself. I love the satisfaction of doing things myself. But when I saw that I could not effectively combat the weeds that were blowing in from the neighbor's yard, and just blowing in, period, I was like, something else has to change where I'm just running around with, the little concentrated Roundup and just hitting the weeds.
Douglas, what's a typical job cost? I'm gonna make a point here for you, Fred.
All right.
Typical job, run-of-the-mill customer, run-of-the-mill job, just middle-of-the-road cost for the customer. What's a typical job run?
Let's just say 50-ish a month.
Okay, there you go. Is your rate more than $50 an hour?
Oh, absolutely.
A lot more, right?
A lot more.
Yeah. So why in the world would you, as a business owner, as a busy family man, wife, kids, whatever, why in the world would you do your own lawn? You got nothing left to prove. Is your time worth more than $50 an hour?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, then of course you're going to pay this man $50. It's going to cost him a lot less than $50 because his guys aren't there for a full hour. They're probably there for 20 or 30 minutes because they're extremely good at their job. They get done and they get out.
They're good and they clean up. I've had other lawn treatment services where they come through and lay down a granule or something or another, and then for the next week, I'm crunching across granules in my driveway and on my steps.
That's so annoying.
Yeah, but these guys, man, they clean up, and the only reason I know they've been there is because there's a stake in my yard, and they have indicated what their treatment is, what I'm supposed to do. And then, you talk about the email thing. Elizabeth gets the email because that's how I was like, oh, they need to aerate the lawn and all those other things. So we do get that personalized communication.
How long have you guys been working with American Lawnscape?
Over a year now.
It's about a year and a half, right?
Yeah, maybe. It's at least that long.
Around a year and a half, give or take. Because we send all of our past tense, because you guys have a downtown studio now. We used to send all of our new hires to Fred's house for headshots for the company. And I was there for somebody. This has been a little more than a year ago. And I got out of my truck and I'm like, oh, dang. Fred's doing something new with his yard.
Well,
It never occurred to me to ask, but now I know it was you. It was you, Douglas, and your guys.
It was us, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention probably one of the most important aspects of our company, which is my partner and my wife, Barbara Crouch. And Barbara came as an executive with AT&T, and she brings in, first of all, a lot more education than me, so that helps, right?
Yeah.
But she brings in this tour de force of communication. You would think that we're a communication company that's also pretty good at killing weeds, and so she has set up a way of getting people into our family of products very simply. And she goes to a lot of work making sure that everybody knows when we're going to be there well ahead of time, that they get on the way text, that they get in the information more than just on the card about how to, what their responsibility is per our treatment and what to expect. And that really is kind of the backbone that not just makes us a lawn treatment company, but makes us part of this community, because it's that partnership aspect that we really admire. And we really admire being, friends and partners with Fred and with the rest of our customers, because that means we're doing something beneficial in the community. When you say that your yard is a little bit more weed free than it was before, man, that makes me feel good. Not just because we did our job, but because we left things just a little bit better than they were when we before we got there. And so we're really big into, the idea that just because we're here and the work that we put in, we can help make McKinney a little bit better than if we weren't here at all.
Absolutely. And I don't know if I said a little bit, but, definitely dramatically different. And, even when I had a weed situation pop up, we contacted you and you sent someone out because there was, I don't know what was springing up, but, you don't just, it just doesn't hit the dead letter office. You actually, received our concern and had a solution for us. So, I definitely appreciate that. All right, James, I think we're bumping up on our time here.
We are. Is there anything else you want to get out? Any message you want to send? Upcoming specials, events, things you're doing before we hit you with that final question?
Well, just check out our website, AmericanLawnscape.com or TurfVeteran.com. Give us a call. We've got some specials that we're running just for listeners of this podcast. You'll probably get a hold of either Barber Retrieve it to fill you in, because we have a number of service offerings for this year. And I just want to say thanks to McKinney, because McKinney not only gave me an opportunity with my business, it was McKinney that made me really feel like a Texan. I'm proud to be a Texan because of the time I've spent here. So thanks to all the listeners, and thanks to you guys.
Love it, man. That's fantastic. I'm here for it.
Final
question, Fred.
Who would win in a fight between the Marines and the Army? No.
I knew it. I knew you were going there.
Who would win in a fight to the death between a giant 12-foot polar bear and a great white shark? The battle takes place in a body of water 6 feet deep, infinite dimensions. There's no sandbar, no shallow end, no shoreline. There's no getting out of the water. To the death, who wins that fight? Polar bear or the shark?
I've got to go with the shark.
Really?
I do.
Why is that?
Because you said 6 feet deep.
Yes, sir.
That's the shark's home field. That's its advantage. And 6 feet's just enough water to make a shark super slippery and dangerous.
All right. Okay.
I would have guessed that wrong. I would have thought
I thought for sure you're going to go polar bear.
Thought the Army guy was going to go polar bear.
Yeah, that's great. Of course, I'm Team Shark.
I'm Team Polar Bear.
James is Team Polar Bear, so.
Well, maybe you'll both just come out unscathed and go have a beer.
Well, yeah. A couple of episodes ago, we said, one of our guests said, well, they wouldn't be fighting. Why would they fight? Those are two apex predators. They're not going to go after each other.
Can we just be friends?
Just respect space.
No, it's this has been a great episode. Thank you for sharing your story, of combat and coming out of the armed services.
Yes, thank you for your service.
Thank you for your service, and twice continued service.
Yeah, no,
you got out and then got back in again because you just loved it so much,
and still got his sweetheart.
Yeah,
amen for Facebook.
I'm telling you, good job.
Well, thank you guys. I've really enjoyed being here.
Yeah,
no, thank you.
He is Douglas Ringer. Check out American Lawnscape in the show notes or in the description on YouTube. This has been another episode of the McKinney Podcast, celebrating what makes us unique by nature. We'll see you next time, ladies and gentlemen. Y'all take care. Thanks again for listening to and watching the McKinney Podcast. We drop a brand new episode every Monday morning. We'd love to connect with you and hear your thoughts, suggestions, and guest recommendations. You can message us on Facebook or send an email to us at mail@McKinneyPodcast.com. This entire production is a passion project for James and Fred and our lovely wives, Elizabeth and Allison. We're so grateful to have you along for the journey. We look forward to seeing you again next week and hopefully in person around town. That's all for now, ladies and gentlemen. Make it a great day.